I'm concerned as an Israeli that they're going to do the same thing now. And I think that every day that goes by that Israel and the US doesn't strike Iranian capabilities and make sure that they never achieve nuclear weapons is a day wasted, because that window of opportunity is closing.
With Hamas rejecting the latest ceasefire deal, how does the U.S. bring these two sides together, and can they bring them to the negotiating table?
Well, it's very hard to see it, Jerry, given Hamas's posture, their refusal to go to another interim deal. The only way you can possibly get them there is through some combination of continued IDF military pressure and whatever's happening internally inside of Gaza amongst average Palestinians, average Gazans who are increasingly taking to the streets, expressing their total contempt and rejection for the way Hamas has manipulated their situation, gotten them into this devastating war, destroying their lives and their future. That combination might get Hamas back to the table and going for another interim deal in which we at least get some number of live hostages back. But beyond that, it looks right now like it's still going to be quite a long slog.
A long slog, still live hostages yet to be recovered here. Jonathan, Hamas and Israel previously agreeing to a ceasefire deal. How do we make sure that another one doesn't break down so quickly?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I think the key country that we're not talking about, that we should be talking about, is Egypt. Because Egypt is the strategic defense of Hamas. Hamas, I do not think that they will turn over the hostages, and I think that they will continue to refuse to disarm and to end the war, because they know that they are safe, because they know that they have Egyptian backing. And as long as they have Egyptian backing, they are not really under significant diplomatic pressure. And while I agree with what John said, military pressure by the Israeli Defense Forces on Hamas is very important, and the IDF is indeed ramping up those operations. But at the end of the day, if there isn't a strategic leverage on Hamas, and that can come through American pressure on Egypt, if that doesn't exist, then Hamas knows that they're just playing a waiting game, and eventually Israeli public opinion will be brought to bear on Israeli decision makers, and somehow the war will end while Hamas still exists. And that is, of course, something that mustn't happen, shouldn't happen, and that should not be the end of the October 7 massacre that Hamas started a year and a half ago.
The stakes here are so high. John, according to the New York Times, Israel was planning to strike Iranian nuclear sites as early as May, but President Trump told them not to do that in an effort to take the diplomatic route. Does this give you hope that Trump and Netanyahu are on the same page?
No, it actually sends me in the opposite direction. I was quite disturbed by the leak. I think the only thing that has gotten Iran's supreme leader to the table while Iran is under maximum economic pressure from the United States is that credible threat of a U.S.-Israeli military strike that will destroy Iran's nuclear facilities and perhaps trigger some kind of more dramatic destabilization inside of Iran. He was afraid of what a military strike could do to his regime. So to the extent that that leak in the New York Times demonstrated some degree of daylight between Israel and the United States on the importance of a credible military threat continuing to hold that sword of Damocles over the supreme leader's head, I think it probably lessened the chances for getting the kind of deal that we all need, which is the full dismantlement of Iran's ability to eventually produce a nuclear weapon.
Well, speaking of Iran, Jonathan, a second round of nuclear talks scheduled this week in Rome, and President Trump, we were just saying, had said that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's his starting point. What needs to happen to get some kind of deal done, in your view?
Yeah, as an Israeli, when I look at the latest interviews and leaks, I am very worried. I'm worried that the cunning Iranians will outsmart a second American president. They outsmarted President Obama and his team a few years ago and got a very good deal from an Iranian perspective and very bad for the US, Europe, and of course Israel. And from a lot of the information that I see now, that seems to be repeating itself. It's good that American officials are saying and reaffirming that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but allowing Iran to have any type of enrichment facility on Iranian soil and not demanding complete disarmament and verification by international observers, I think that's a big mistake. And at the end of the day, the Iranians are master negotiators. They really wrote the book on how to pull out time and how to get the most out of international complex negotiations. I'm concerned as an Israeli that they're going to do the same thing now. And I think that every day that goes by that Israel and the US doesn't strike Iranian capabilities and make sure that they never achieve nuclear weapons is a day wasted, because that window of opportunity is closing. And I think that this is something that we may regret many years in the future.
We've got a long way to go, that's for sure. John, what do you make of this report that the U.S. could ease sanctions on Russia if they agree to a ceasefire deal with Ukraine? Is that the right move?
Listen, I think without giving Putin sanctions relief, giving him significant territory inside of Ukraine, without balancing it on the Ukrainian side with bolstering their ability to deter further Russian aggression, giving them some kind of assurances either from Europe, NATO, from the United States, that we are not going to allow Putin to pause, regroup, and then commence his attack again, break the ceasefire at a future point in time, that we're essentially playing into Putin's playbook, I fear. So I'm willing to wait and see what Secretary Rubio meant and what kind of proposal was put on the table. But if it's only satisfying Russian demands for a ceasefire, then I think we're just setting ourselves up for future problems with the Russians down the line.
The stakes on all of these conversations so very high indeed. John Hanna and Jonathan Concricus, thanks for coming in and helping us understand them. We appreciate your time.
According to what Jonathan Concricus says over here, why should Hamas give up any of the hostages? It's the only bit of leverage that they have at all in the situation. They don't care about their own civilians. They don't care about civilian casualties. In fact, they want those civilian casualty numbers to go up as much as possible so that they look like the victim. So it's to their own advantage to have more civilian casualties and just keep fighting and doing and whatever they're doing, retain the hostages and let Israel destroy itself in the sense of public opinion. So unless there's one of those ridiculous exchanges that we've seen in the past where there's one Israeli hostage for 1,000 Palestinian prisoners that were imprisoned for terrorist activity, we may not see a deal come very soon. That's according to what Jonathan Concricus is saying over here. As far as Iran is concerned, that's another big thing that everybody's looking at, that Israel, the West, the United States has said that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, that is something extraordinarily dangerous. In fact, retired Colonel Kemp said that it would be the most significant threat to the U.S. since World War II if Iran had a nuclear weapon. So we do have to stop that. How that is actually going to play out, whether that's going to come out with diplomacy or whether there's going to have to be some sort of strikes in order to deter Iran from having any nuclear capabilities, time, I guess, will tell. We pray that everything resolve itself in a very quick manner, in as peaceful and seamless way as possible. And if you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.